In the prehistoric age, people used positioning and floats to make layouts on a web page. But then came Flexbox. Flexbox, which stands for Flexible Box, allows you to easily make layouts on a web page. To start using Flexbox, you need to have a container with some children inside, and then in a style sheet, you have to just give a display of flex to your container, and then this automatically creates two axes, one main axis and the other cross axis. Now to change the direction of their alignment in the axis, you can type flex direction to column so that they are aligned in a column. And if you want to again align it to a row, you can align it to a row. And there's another property which is the gap property, which just determines how many pixels of space should be in between these two adjacent elements. So if I give 10 pixels, it will give a pixel of 10 pixels. If I give it 20 pixels, we give a width of 20 pixels. Okay. The next thing that we need to know is the justify content property. This justify content property determines how these elements are aligned in the main axis. What I can do, if I just give it a center, then all of these elements will be aligned to the center. If I just give it a space around, it will create an even space all around the elements. If I give it a space between, it will maintain equal space in between two adjacent elements. So there are many other properties. The next thing that we need to know is the align items property. The align items property determines this in the cross axis. So if I just give align center, it will determine how my elements are aligned in the cross axis. So at center, they will be aligned to the center. If I just type flex start, then they will be aligned to the start of the flex box. Flex between, flex end, sorry, flex end, then it will be aligned to the end of the flex box. The next property that we need to know is the flex wrap property. So suppose I have 8 elements in this main axis, and you could see that all elements have shrinked. Now to avoid that, you use flex wrap property, and flex wrap, if you set it to wrap, then it will let the flex box to uh, it will let the flex box to extend to multiple lines. So you could now see that they are not shrinked. And when you use this property flex wrap to wrap, that unlocks another property known as flex align content. Now this is not the same as align items. The align content works only when the flex box extends to multiple lines, and this flex wrap is set to wrap, and the elements are really wrapping to multiple lines. Now this align content works pretty much the same as this align items, and if we give it flex start, then all of the elements will be aligned to the flex start and flex end, then they will be aligned in the cross axis to the end of the flex box. Center would align them at the center. And now the next property is flex flow. This flex flow is a short form of flex direction and flex wrap. If I just give it a row wrap, then the elements will be aligned in a row and they will wrap around. Okay. The properties that we have discussed in now belong to the whole container itself. Now to discuss the individual properties of these elements, I will just comment out some of my elements so that I have just 4 elements here. And now I will take just my first element and give it a flex grow of, let's say, 1. Now this takes a unitless value, and it lets the element to grow if the space is available for it to grow. Now if I give my second element a flex grow of 2, then it will grow 2 times more than my first element. And for by default, each has a flex grow of 0. So now if I give both the flex of 0, then both will have, and all of the elements will have the same width. And now the second thing that we have to discuss is the flex string. Now this flex string also takes a unitless value. Let's say it will take a value of 5, and now it determines how faster an element would shrink if the size of the container reduces. So now if I just reduce my size of the container, you could see that the first element is shrinking more than my initial elements. So this is what flex string does. The next property that we have to discuss is the order property. Now if I just give each of my elements a order, now each of my elements will get aligned to a specific order. My first element will get aligned to the second position, the second element will get aligned to the first position, the third will be placed at the third position, and the fourth will be placed at the fourth position. The next property is aligns self, and this aligns self properties aligns the individual item in the cross axis. Now you could see the first item is getting aligned to the center of the cross axis. If we give this the flex start, and it will again align to the start. If I give it a flex end, it will get aligned to the end of the flex blocks. The next property is flex basis. This flex basis allows you to override the initial size of this element. So if I give you a flex basis of 200 pixels, then you could see that its width will be now 200 pixels. If I give it a 400 pixels, it will be changed to 400 pixels. You would usually not use flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis individually. What you will instead do is use flex property with a shorthand for flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis. Now, it necessarily takes one argument. So if you just give it a single value, it will be flex grow. If you give it another value, it will be flex shrink. If you give another value, it will be the flex basis. Okay. So now these were the properties of these individual items, and these were the properties of the container itself. I hope that you have understood all the properties of Flexbox, and if you have understood, please subscribe my channel.